4 in the morning, less than 48 hours after I said, I do. My phone's alarm, set for a gentle 7 a.m., was still sleeping soundly, but the door to our bedroom wasn't. It was being beaten like a drum in a frantic, desperate solo. Bam, bam, bam. It was the kind of knocking that isn't asking for entry, it's demanding surrender. I jolted awake, my mind feeling like it was stuffed with wet cotton. A wave of exhaustion washed over me, so heavy it felt like a lead blanket. The wedding yesterday had started at the crack of dawn and didn't wrap until nearly midnight. We'd stumbled back to this room, and my head hadn't even hit the pillow until after 12. Do the math. I hadn't even gotten 4 full hours of sleep. Bam, bam, bam. The knocking morphed into a flat-palmed slapping, the wood vibrating with each angry impact. Then, a woman's voice, sharp enough to grate cheese, sliced through the door. Maya! Get up! Now! I squinted into the darkness, my throat as dry as sand. Who is it? I croaked. Who do you think it is? It's your mother-in-law. Get up and make breakfast. My heart started hammering against my ribs. For a split second, I thought I was trapped in a nightmare about this house, this new title of wife, this kitchen I barely knew, and a schedule that someone else now held like a leash around my neck. But the pounding on the door was too real. So real that the glass of water on the nightstand was rattling. I turned to my side. Nate, my new husband, was dead to the world, breathing evenly, eyes shut tight, a look of serene peace on his face, as if the apocalypse wasn't currently happening just outside our door. I shoved his arm, hard. Nate, your mom is calling for me. He grunted something deep in his throat, rolled over, pulled the covers tighter, and continued sleeping. He didn't open his eyes. He didn't ask a single question. He had no intention of getting up. Outside, the assault on the door grew more ferocious, now sounding like someone was kicking it. Do you hear me? Get a move on. Don't you dare be lazy. I took a deep breath, and a sharp pain shot through my temple. My lower back was still aching from trying on wedding dresses, and my calves were screaming from standing in 4-inch heels for 16 straight hours. I swung my legs out of bed, my bare feet hitting the cold hardwood floor, and my head spun. I stumbled to the door and leaned my forehead against the cool wood, trying to keep my voice as polite as a new daughter-in-law is supposed to. Brenda? It's only 4 o'clock. Can't this wait until the sun is up? The other side went silent for exactly 1 beat. Then, my mother-in-law Brenda's voice shot up an octave, shrill as a fire alarm. What? You can't handle 4 a.m. Your father-in-law has a fishing trip at 6. He needs to eat before he goes. Do you think breakfast just magically appears? You have to wash the greens, make the pancake batter, fry the bacon, boil the eggs. Now that you're this family's daughter-in-law, waking up early to cook is your duty. When I married into this family, I was in the kitchen by 5 every single morning, serving everyone, and you're acting like a spoiled princess. My hand clenched the doorknob, my knuckles turning white. Just yesterday, my parents had handed my new in-laws an envelope with a check for $20,000, a gift to ensure their daughter would be welcomed and respected. On top of that, I'd spent $15,000 of my own money on a brand new Rolex for my father-in-law and a diamond bracelet from Tiffany's for Brenda, a gesture of my goodwill. At the reception, Brenda had smiled so wide her eyes disappeared. She'd clutched my mother's hand and cooed, "This girl is one of us now. I'll love her, like she's my own daughter." For a few hours, I had actually believed her, and now, not even a full day later, she was pounding on my door, like I was the hired help. Brenda let out a cynical scoff through the door. Tired? Who do you think was the most tired yesterday? All you had to do was sit there, collect envelopes, and say thank you. You call that tiring? Nate's father and I were running around coordinating with caterers, setting up tables, cleaning up afterward, and we're still up. You're young. Stop acting so fragile. I glanced back at Nate, still sleeping, still silent, still a world away. I felt a cold clamp squeeze my chest, a pain that shot right down my spine. Outside the door, Brenda's tone shifted from commanding to threatening. "Open this door. I'm standing right here. Don't make me wait." Indiscub. I stood frozen for a second, then unlocked the door. As it creaked open, a draft from the hallway hit my face. Brenda stood there in a pair of wrinkled floral pajamas, her hair in a net bonnet, her face still covered in a shiny, slick layer of a moisturizing mask. The dim, yellow hallway light made her look even colder, like a warden checking on an inmate. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe, not with the warmth of a mother-in-law, but with the critical gaze of a boss interviewing a candidate for a job they've already decided is unqualified. "Look at you. Pathetic. It's 4 a.m., and you're already falling apart. How are you going to survive in this house?" she said, her voice flat. "Get down to the kitchen. I've already laid everything out. Flour is in the canister on the left, eggs are in the fridge, salt and sugar are on the spice rack. From now on, you wake up at 5:30 every day to make breakfast, cook lunch at noon, and have dinner on the table by 6 p.m. Got it?" I stood in the doorway, still in my thin pajamas, my feet numb from the cold floor. A thought, small but sharp as a needle, pricked my mind. So, it's over. The wedding is done, and the management has begun. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "Brenda, my job is in New York. I have to go back in a couple of days. Maybe we can discuss the cooking schedule?" Brenda's face instantly hardened. She slapped the doorframe with her open palm. The sound was so loud it made my ears ring. "What job? You're married now. You're part of this family. Quit that job in New York. How much could you possibly be making? Is it even enough to cover your commute and your fancy city lunches? Nate makes $80,000 a year. He can take care of you. Your job now is to stay home, serve his parents, and give me grandchildren. Got it? What good is a woman with a great career? In the end, you all end up in the kitchen anyway." I heard every single word, and each one landed like a stone on a marble floor. Suddenly, I remembered all the late nights I'd spent grinding on projects in my Manhattan office, the all-nighters with my team, the new responsibilities I'd fought for. My annual income was over $150,000. I had just been promoted to lead project manager, with a team of a dozen people under me. I was studying for a certification that would push me even higher. I had told Nate all of this before the wedding. He'd nodded. He'd said, "Of course, Maya, I'll always support your career." Now, in front of his mother, those promises felt like wet paper, dissolving into nothing. Brenda waved her hand dismissively, as if shooing away a fly. "Enough talk. Get to the kitchen. Your father-in-law likes his eggs boiled, 2 of them. Nate likes pancakes, but the mix from the box is garbage. Tomorrow, you'll learn to make them from scratch. I'll teach you. I'll give you 10 minutes. With that, she turned and walked down the stairs. Her footsteps were so heavy the floorboards seemed to vibrate with each one. Thump, thump, thump. Each step was like a nail being hammered into my skull. The hallway was suddenly vast and empty. I stood there, motionless. On the wall hung our wedding portrait. In the photo, I was beaming, radiant. Nate had his arm around my shoulder. Beneath it, in a delicate script, it read, "Together forever." I looked at those 2 words and wanted to laugh. A bitter, hollow laugh. It felt like the punchline to a very, very expensive joke. I closed the door and turned back into the room. The air was still warm, still quiet, still filled with the steady, sleeping breath of my husband, but inside me, something had just been switched on. A small, cold, but very clear flame. I walked to the side of the bed and looked down at the man who, just last night, had held my hand and made vows in front of our families. This time, I didn't shake him gently. I shoved him. "Nate." He stirred, his voice thick with sleep. "What is it?" "I'm so tired." I stared directly into his face, a chill running down my nose. "Nate, your mother is demanding I get up and cook breakfast. It's 4 a.m. Did you hear me?" Nate's eyes fluttered open, hazy, as if being pulled from a wonderful dream. He was silent for 2 beats. Then he let out a lazy, indifferent sigh, the kind of sigh you make when talking about the weather. Oh, so what? In that single moment, I understood. The banging I'd heard wasn't just on the bedroom door. It was banging on the very last shred of faith I had in this marriage. And Nate's "so what?" was the first swing of the sledgehammer. Nate's question fell into the quiet room like a shard of ice. So what? 2 small words, delivered without a hint of anger or confusion, yet they had the force to stop my world dead in its tracks. In that moment, I realized that if Brenda was the one banging on the door from the outside, Nate was the one who had just bolted it from the inside, locking me out for good. I took a deep, steadying breath, fighting to keep my voice even. "I'm exhausted, Nate. We were up all day for the wedding. I just want to sleep a little longer. Could you please go out and tell your mom that I'll take care of it later today?" He let out a long, theatrical yawn, rubbed his eyes, and then turned his back to me, his voice muffled by the comforter. "My mom's just like that. Just go down and do it. It's only breakfast. What's the big deal?" I stared at the back of his head, at the silly cartoon bear pattern on his pajamas, a set I'd bought him because I thought it was cute. Right now, the grinning bear seemed to be mocking me. "Nate," my voice dropped, losing its pleading tone, "do you have any idea what time I went to sleep last night?" He rolled back over, his eyes still half closed. "Yeah, like almost midnight, and it's 4 now, so you got 4 hours. What's the problem?" 4 hours, the number echoed in my head. 4 hours of sleep to mark our wedding day, our wedding night, and my first day as a member of this new family. "Nate," I said again, each word now carefully chiseled, "this is the first morning after our wedding." He sighed, the sound heavy with annoyance. "Why are you being so sensitive? Mom is just trying to do what's best for you, get you into a good routine. Waking up early is healthy. Besides, she had it way tougher when she was a new wife." There it was, the classic excuse. She had it worse. "It's for your own good." The lines were so predictable I could have said them for him. I went silent for a few seconds, the image of Brenda in the hallway flashing in my mind, her condescending stare, the way she dictated my new life schedule like a prison warden, her casual dismissal of my career. It all lined up, a cold, orderly procession of disrespect. "Nate," my voice was low and icy now, "do you honestly think your mother banging on our bedroom door at 4 a.m. is normal?" He frowned, finally opening his eyes all the way, his gaze filled with impatience. "What's normal got to do with it? This is how my family is. You're new here, you're just not used to it. Once you get used to it, it'll feel normal." "Are you used to it?" The question made him pause. I grew up with it. You grew up with her waking you up at 4 a.m. Well, no, not me. So, just me then." He fell silent, but it wasn't a thoughtful silence. It was the silence of avoidance. "Look, can you just not make a big deal out of this?" he said, his voice pleading. "Mom's already waiting downstairs. Just go do it and get it over with. I'm tired." Tired. The word was a bitter joke. The man who had slept soundly all night was tired, but the woman who had been on her feet for 16 hours and slept for less than 4 wasn't allowed to be. I glanced at my phone. 4:17 a.m. From the hallway, I could hear Brenda's footsteps, pausing at the bottom of the stairs as if she were listening in. "Nate," I said, my voice no longer trembling, "I'm going to ask you one last time. Will you go out there and tell your mother to let me rest today?" He looked at me, a flicker of hesitation in his eyes, but it was gone in a flash. He shook his head. "I can't. You know how she is. It's not worth the fight. Besides, as a daughter-in-law, you should know how to be a little more accommodating." Accommodating. That word was a slap in the face. I nodded slowly. "Okay." Nate let out a breath of relief, thinking the argument was over. "Good. Now go on down. I'm going to get a little more sleep." He turned his back to me again, pulling the blanket up to his ears. I stood motionless by the bed. No tears, no anger. Just a cold, clean snap, like a wire inside me had been stretched too far and finally broke. I knew, with absolute certainty, that if I walked down to that kitchen today, I would be walking down those stairs every morning at dawn for the rest of my life. If I was silent today, my silence would be taken as consent forever. I turned and walked to the closet. The sound of the sliding door creaking open made Nate flinch. "What are you doing?" he asked, turning back. I didn't answer. I started taking my clothes out, one by one, folding them neatly on the bed. My movements were slow but deliberate, each fold a confirmation of my decision. "Maya," Nate's voice rose with alarm, "don't overreact. I pulled my suitcase from the corner of the room. The wheels made a stark, clattering sound on the hardwood floor, echoing in the quiet room. He shot up in bed. "Where do you think you're going?" "Back to New York." 3 simple words. No emotion, no explanation. "Are you crazy?" He forced a laugh. "We just got married and you're talking about leaving? Don't be a child." I knelt, placing my folded clothes into the suitcase. "Nate, I'm not kidding." He scrambled out of bed and rushed over, grabbing my arm. "It's just breakfast. Stop making this into a federal case. My mom's hot-headed. Just be patient with her for a little while." I looked up at him. For the first time that morning, I really looked at him, not as the groom from yesterday, but as the man he was now. A man terrified of standing between his wife and his mother, so he chose the path of least resistance, shoving his wife into the line of fire. "Nate," my voice was strangely calm, "if I'm patient today, I'll have to be patient tomorrow, and the day after that, and for the rest of my life. Are you prepared to guarantee that won't happen?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. From downstairs, Brenda's voice yelled up, sharp with impatience. "What is taking so long up there?" Nate glanced nervously toward the door, then back at me, his eyes pleading. Just go down and cook. We'll talk about this later." I gently pulled my arm from his grasp. There is no later. I zipped the suitcase shut. The sound was final, decisive. In that moment, I knew this was never about breakfast. This was about a line being drawn in the sand, and if I didn't walk away now, I would never find my way back. I pulled the suitcase toward the door. Nate stood frozen in the middle of the room, too stunned to stop me, too slow to understand. When I reached the door, my hand on the knob, I could feel my own heart beating a heavy, sorrowful rhythm. Not out of fear, but out of a chaotic mix of grief and disbelief that was choking me. Just yesterday, I had stood before my family and friends, promising a lifetime of happiness. Now, at 4:30 in the morning, I was about to flee this house like a fugitive. Nate lunged forward, blocking the door. "Maya, calm down. Don't do this. Mom's downstairs. Let's just go talk to her properly." I looked at him, my voice devoid of warmth. "And what does properly mean?" "It means I go down to the kitchen at 4 a.m., cook breakfast, and pretend this is normal, right?" He winced. "Why are you talking like that? It's just breakfast. Stop blowing it out of proportion." I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "You call your mother banging on our bedroom door at 4 in the morning just breakfast?" He hesitated, then softened his tone, trying a different tactic. "Look, I'm sorry. My mom is old-fashioned. It's hard for her to change. Just be patient. I promise things will be different later." I didn't argue anymore. When someone considers abuse to be normal, explanations are pointless. I reached for the doorknob again. Nate grabbed my wrist, his grip so tight it hurt. "Are you really leaving? If you leave now, the whole neighborhood will be laughing at my family. A bride running away the day after the wedding? What will that do to my reputation?" I looked down at his hand, gripping my wrist, then up into his eyes. "You're worried about your reputation. I'm worried about my life." I pried his fingers off me, opened the door, and stepped into the freezing hallway. The house was silent, but it wasn't peaceful. From the kitchen downstairs, I could hear the rhythmic clatter of a knife on a cutting board, as if Brenda was deliberately making noise to remind me my time was up. I dragged my suitcase down the stairs, the wheels bumping against the edge of each step. Thump, thump, thump. It sounded like nails being hammered into the coffin of a marriage that had died before it even had a chance to live. Nate scrambled down the stairs after me, out of breath. "Maya, don't! We can talk about this." I didn't look back. Looking back meant risking a moment of weakness, and weakness in the face of people with no boundaries is a self-dug grave. When I reached the bottom floor, the living room lights were blazing. Brenda stood at the entrance to the kitchen, now wearing a floral apron over her pajamas. She was holding a large kitchen knife, her face bare but her eyes sharper than the blade in her hand. The second she saw me and my suitcase, she froze for a beat, then her eyes narrowed. "What kind of stunt are you trying to pull?" I set my suitcase down and stood up straight. "I'm going back to New York." Brenda let out a harsh, piercing laugh. "Leaving? You just got married and you're talking about leaving? You've got some nerve. Who do you think you're threatening? Nate rushed between us, stammering. Mom, calm down. Maya's just tired. Brenda whipped her head toward him. Tired of what? She can't even handle making one breakfast. What did we marry her for? I heard that last line, and something inside me went completely still, like a lake freezing over in an instant. In her eyes, I wasn't married to become Nate's wife. I was hired to become the family's servant. I opened my handbag and took out the check my parents had given them, $20,000. I slapped it down on the dining table. Brenda, here's the wedding gift from my parents. I'm returning it, in full. The knife in Brenda's hand stopped midair. What did you just say? I looked her directly in the eye. I'm sorry, I can't be your daughter-in-law. I will not accept being woken up at 4 a.m. to cook, especially not on the first day after my wedding. Nate was frantic. Maya, what are you saying? Nobody gets divorced over breakfast. I turned to him, my voice so calm it surprised even me. It's not because of the breakfast, Nate. It's because of you. He went pale. I pressed on, not allowing myself to pause, because pausing meant wavering. Yesterday, I also gave your parents gifts, totaling $15,000. A Rolex for your father and a diamond bracelet for you. I expect that money to be returned to me. I'm not taking anything from this family, and I'm not leaving anything behind. Brenda's eyes bulged, her hands trembling with rage. The knife fell from her grasp, clattering loudly on the floor. My God! Are you a daughter-in-law or a debt collector? You're demanding money from us? I shook my head. No, I'm demanding my money back. I gave those gifts in good faith. Now that I am no longer part of this family, I am withdrawing that faith. Brenda pointed a shaking finger at my face, her voice tearing through the air. You ungrateful brat! What have we done to you? We ask you to make one breakfast and you demand a divorce? Who do you think you are? I spoke slowly, clearly, each word unwavering. I am a woman with a career in New York, with my own apartment, my own savings, and my own life. I don't need to prove I'm a good daughter-in-law by waking up at 4 a.m. to work in a kitchen. The living room fell dead silent. Nate stood beside me, his face ashen. Brenda was breathing heavily, looking like she wanted to lunge at me but was held back by the thought of what a scene it would cause. I took out my phone, opened the voice recorder app, and placed it on the table. When Brenda saw it, her eyes widened in fury. What are you doing? I remained calm. I'm recording this for my own protection, from 4 a.m. this morning when you began banging on my door. I need evidence for everything I'm saying. Nate was horrified. Maya, stop it. Don't record this. We can handle this privately, in the family. I looked at Nate. In the family? What family? The moment you said, so what? I knew this was no longer my family. Brenda shrieked, her voice cracking. You dare record me? You want to smear my family's name? You want the whole town to know my new daughter-in-law is demanding a divorce the day after the wedding? I stopped the recording, saved the file, and looked her straight in the eye. I'm not trying to smear anyone. I'm just protecting myself. I grabbed the handle of my suitcase and headed for the front door. Nate lunged, grabbing the suitcase handle, trying to pull it back. Maya, wait. Have you really thought this through? If you leave, what about the wedding? What will our friends and family think? How am I supposed to live with this? I turned back, my anger gone, replaced by a chilling clarity. How were you supposed to let me live? The question hung in the air like a guillotine. Nate opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I delivered the final blow, my voice as firm as a judge's gavel. You have 2 hours and 48 minutes to get me my $15,000. If I don't have it by then, I'm going back to New York and calling my lawyer. I opened the door. A gust of cold, damp air hit my face. Behind me, Brenda's voice rose into a hysterical scream. Stop! If you walk out that door, don't you ever think about coming back. I didn't turn around, but just as my hand touched the doorknob, a different voice cut through the chaos, hoarse, no longer shrill. Wait. I paused, my back still to them, listening. Was it a threat or a surrender? Brenda hurried out of the kitchen, her slippers slapping against the tile floor. Nate still had a desperate grip on my suitcase, his eyes red with a mixture of anger and fear. Mom, say something. Don't let her go, he pleaded like a child. Brenda shot him a withering look, then turned her gaze to me. Her eyes were cold and calculating, the look of someone settling a bad debt to avoid a bigger loss. "You want the money, is that it?" she said, her voice tight with suppressed rage. "Fine, I'll give it to you. But you have to promise me one thing." I turned around fully, meeting her glare. "What?" "You will not tell anyone what happened here today," she said, emphasizing each word. "This family has a reputation to uphold. If you breathe a word of this, the neighbors, our relatives, they will laugh in my face." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "You're afraid of losing face, but you weren't afraid to humiliate your daughter-in-law at 4 a.m. Brenda's jaw clenched, her lips trembling. "Don't you get smart with me. I said I'll pay you. Now you keep your mouth shut, and we'll pretend this never happened." I gave a slow, deliberate nod. "I have no desire to tell your story. I just want my money back. Whether you hide this or broadcast it is your choice. I'm no longer protecting this family's honor, because I'm no longer a part of this family." Brenda stared at me, trying to find a crack in my composure, but I showed her nothing but resolve. After a long moment, she spun around. "Tom, where are you? Get the money." A moment later, shuffling footsteps echoed from the staircase. My father-in-law, Tom, appeared, wearing a tank top and shorts, his hair a mess, looking bewildered. He saw me, saw the suitcase, then looked at his wife, his voice groggy with sleep. "What's all this noise? It's the crack of dawn." Brenda rushed to him, grabbing his arm like a lifeline. "Tom, listen to me. Our new daughter-in-law is demanding a divorce. She's returned the check. She's demanding we give her back the $15,000 for her gifts, and she's recording us. How am I supposed to face the neighbors?" Tom's face hardened as he looked at me. He took a step forward, his voice low and menacing. "What is this? Divorce? You just got married yesterday." I stood my ground, not flinching from his gaze. "Yes, because I will not be treated like a servant. I can cook, I can help around the house, but I will not be woken up by someone banging on my door at 4 a.m. and be ordered to quit my job to serve you." Tom's mouth opened and closed. A flicker of confusion crossed his face, but he quickly glanced at Brenda, as if seeking her approval before speaking. Just as I expected, he sighed, his tone a weak attempt at mediation, but the weight of his words fell squarely on me. Now, let's not be hasty. You're new to the family. You're not used to our ways. Your mother-in-law was just trying to teach you the ropes, for your own good. Just be a little patient. Keep the peace in the family." End quote. I looked at him, my insides turning to ice. Be patient. The easiest advice in the world to give when you're not the one being sacrificed. "With all due respect," I said, trying to maintain a semblance of politeness, "I didn't come here to learn how to endure. I came here to be a wife." Brenda jumped in, her voice dripping with venom. "Some wife you are. A wife who can't cook, can't wake up early, and can't listen to her elders? What good is a wife like that?" Nate, his face pale, was still trying to plead with me with his eyes. "Maya, please, listen to me. Don't do this. I'm begging you." I turned to him and asked the question that would seal my own escape. "Nate, if I hadn't packed my suitcase, would you have said a single word to your mother?" He froze, his eyes darting around the room, his lips moving but forming no words. He couldn't answer. That silence was more honest than any confession. I nodded, confirming what I already knew. "That's enough." I checked my watch. 5:12 a.m. My flight was at 8. There was still time, if they moved quickly. "I'll say it one last time," I announced, my voice steady, each word a nail in the coffin. $15,000 was the money I spent on gifts. I have returned the check from your family. I am asking for nothing more. But that $15,000, I will have it today. Otherwise, I go back to New York and my lawyer will be in touch." Brenda scoffed. "And where am I supposed to get that kind of cash at this hour?" "It's in the bank." I was unfazed. "Then you can wire it, you can borrow it, or you can sell the diamond bracelet I bought you. I don't care how you do it. I just want the money returned to the person who spent it." Tom scowled, clearly offended. "You're being unreasonable. A gift is a gift. You don't ask for it back." I met his gaze without blinking. I'm no longer your daughter-in-law, so the conditions of the gift have changed. A gift is given in a relationship of goodwill. When that relationship is based on disrespect, I have every right to revoke my goodwill. Brenda suddenly shrieked, lunging toward the table as if to sweep the check onto the floor. Who do you think you are? You think your money makes you so powerful? You're using it to threaten us. I didn't flinch. I simply picked up my phone again, my thumb hovering over the record button. I'm not threatening you. I'm following a proper procedure, and I'm documenting it to prevent you from accusing me of slander later. Tom saw the phone, and his face went white. He grabbed Brenda's arm, whispering something urgently in her ear. I saw the fear in their eyes, not fear of me, but fear of evidence, fear of their private shame becoming a public story. Brenda gritted her teeth, turning away as if being forced to swallow poison. Fine, wait here. She stormed into a back room. A minute later, she returned with a thick stack of cash and threw it on the coffee table. There, 15,000. Count it. Count it carefully. I walked over, not rushing, not shaking. I sat down, picked up the stack of bills, and began to count, one by one. The crisp rustle of $100 bills was the only sound in the tense, silent room. It felt like a courtroom. Nate watched me, his eyes glistening with tears. Tom stood rigid. Brenda stared, her eyes burning with a hatred so intense it felt physical. I finished my count. It was all there. I put the money in my bag, zipped it up, stood, and picked up my suitcase. Brenda's voice was as cold as ice. Now that you have your money, are you satisfied? Can you get out? I nodded. Yes, I'm leaving. I walked to the door, but before I opened it, I turned back to face the three of them. My voice was calm, but every word was a deliberate cut. If this family truly believes that forcing a daughter-in-law to wake up at 4 a.m. to cook is normal, then by all means, keep waiting for someone who will endure it. But that person isn't me. I opened the door. The cold morning mist flooded in. The sky was just beginning to show a faint streak of dawn. I pulled my suitcase over the threshold and walked out, without looking back. I dragged my suitcase through the front yard, the damp air stinging my cheeks. The small, private street was still dark, the streetlights casting a sleepy, yellow glow. The entire neighborhood was silent, except for the clatter of my suitcase wheels on the pavement and the frantic pounding of my own heart. It wasn't fear anymore, it was the adrenaline of a successful escape. The front door was still open behind me. Nate came running out, his bare feet slapping against the cold concrete, his voice hoarse and desperate. "Maya, wait, please don't go." I didn't turn around. I was afraid that if I saw his face, I would remember the man I fell in love with, the man who promised to protect me, the man who held me in the cold New York wind and said, "When we're married, I'll never let anyone hurt you." But that man, and his promises, had died the moment he'd asked, "So what?" He caught up to me, grabbing the handle of the suitcase. "Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. I'll talk to my mom. I won't let her wake you up early anymore. Just come back. Let's talk." I stopped for a single beat and turned to face him. "You'll talk to her now?" Nate nodded frantically, his eyes red. "Yes, I'll tell her she can't do that anymore. She'll agree. Just trust me. One more time." I looked at the sheer panic on his face and understood something with chilling clarity. He wasn't panicked because he loved me. He was panicked because he was afraid of losing the picture-perfect wedding, afraid of the neighborhood gossip, afraid of the dent this would put in his family's precious honor. I asked him, my voice flat, a simple confirmation of fact. "If I hadn't packed my suitcase, would you have talked to her?" Nate froze, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. His eyes darted away. His silence was a deafening confession. I nodded. "So you'll only stand up for me when I'm already gone, not when I was being humiliated at 4 a.m, not when I begged you for a little more sleep, only when you realized you were losing control." He shook his head frantically, his voice breaking. "No, that's not it. I didn't know what to do. I was stuck between you and my mom." I looked at him, my heart sinking but not softening. "Being stuck between your mother and your wife is your problem to solve, Nate. But who you choose to side with reveals your character." I started walking again. He pulled at the suitcase one last time, his voice desperate, like a drowning man grasping at a reed. Maya, don't be so cruel. We just got married. If you go back to New York, what will people say? What will your parents think? Have you even thought about me in all of this? I let out a laugh, but it was choked with unshed tears. You're asking if I thought about you? When your mother was banging on my door at 4 a.m, did you think about me? He was speechless. I yanked the suitcase free, its wheels splashing through a small puddle. I reached the gate of the housing complex. The tall iron gate was locked. The night security guard, an older man, was sitting in his little booth. Seeing me with a suitcase before dawn, he looked up, surprised. Miss? Leaving so early? I managed a thin, calm smile. Yes, I have an early flight to catch back to New York. The guard looked at me, then at Nate running up behind me, his expression curious. But he just nodded, got up, and unlatched the heavy gate. The sound of the iron scraping open was like another door in my life swinging wide. Just then, Nate reached the gate, but it was already between us. The guard instinctively put an arm out, a reflex to maintain order. Sir, please don't cause a disturbance. Nate grabbed the iron bars, his face pressed against them, his voice cracking. Maya, don't go. I was wrong. I stood on the other side of the gate, my hand on my suitcase. I looked at him through the cold iron bars. Yesterday, he was the groom. Today, he was a man trapped behind a fence, crying out his wife's name like she was about to be hit by a train. But I didn't go back. A taxi was cruising slowly down the street. The guard raised his hand and waved it down. The car stopped, and the driver rolled down the window. Where to, ma'am? JFK Airport. And please take the fastest route. I lifted my suitcase into the trunk. As I slid into the back seat, the car door shut with a solid, final thud. It was a period at the end of a very short sentence. I glanced through the rear window. Nate was still at the gate, his hands gripping the bars, his mouth still calling my name, but the sound was sealed off by the glass, growing fainter and fainter, like a scene from a movie I was no longer in. The car pulled away, and the city began to wake up. Food cart vendors were pushing their carts, the smell of coffee and bacon mixing with the morning mist. A few construction workers in reflective vests rode by on motorcycles. The traffic lights changed colors. This small town was moving on with its day, as if a marriage hadn't just died in less than 24 hours. I leaned back against the seat and closed my eyes. My throat was raw. The sound of the relentless banging and Nate's cold, "So what?" were tangled together in my head, a rope tightening around my memory. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, probably noticing my red eyes. He asked quietly, "Business trip?" I didn't want to lie, but I didn't want to explain. I just whispered, "No, I'm going home." I repeated the word to myself, home. My home wasn't a place where someone had the right to beat on my bedroom door at 4 a.m. My home wasn't a place where my husband turned his back and said, "What's the big deal?" My home was a place where I was allowed to sleep, to breathe, to exist as a human being. The car left the quiet suburban streets and merged onto the highway. The sky in the east was growing brighter. A new day was dawning, and inside me, a tiny sliver of light was breaking through, whispering, "You did the right thing." My phone was buzzing nonstop. I pulled it out. A flood of text messages from Nate. I didn't read them. I just swiped them away and put the phone on silent. I didn't need to hear any more apologies. What I needed was respect, the one thing he had failed to give me when it mattered most. The car sped down the highway. The airport was getting closer with every minute. And with every minute that passed, I felt a little bit lighter, as if chains were falling away from my body, one link at a time. I arrived at the airport at 6:20 a.m. My flight wasn't for another hour and 40 minutes, but it felt like I had already lived a lifetime that morning. The terminal was vast and cold, the white fluorescent lights reflecting off the polished floors, making everything feel sterile and distant. People with suitcases rushed past me like hurried ghosts. The automated flight announcements echoed through the hall, monotonous and impersonal. I found an empty row of seats near a large window, placed my suitcase beside me, and sat down. My back was aching, my eyes burned from lack of sleep, but my mind was unnervingly clear. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still hear the 4 a.m. banging, a hammer pounding on a fresh wound. My phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up relentlessly with new notifications. I finally looked. 83 unread messages, all from Nate. Maya, I'm so sorry. Please come back. I talked to Mom. I was wrong. I was stupid. I wasn't thinking. Please don't do this. I can't handle it. Whatever you want, I'll do it. The messages were a mix of long, rambling pleas and short, desperate phrases. But they all had one thing in common. They came after I had walked through that iron gate. They came when he had no other option left but to beg. I stared at the screen for a moment, then turned off the notifications for his number. I didn't block him yet. Not because I still had feelings, but because I wanted a clear record of how a person apologizes when they're afraid of losing something, not when they understand they were wrong. A friend request popped up on my screen. Brenda. She hadn't typed anything. Instead, she had sent a string of over a dozen voice messages. Just looking at the different lengths of the blue audio waves, I could imagine her tone a frantic mix of crying, scolding, pleading, and threatening. A desperate attempt to reel me back in to save face. I didn't listen. I turned off her notifications too. I opened up my social media. The wedding photos from 2 days ago were still at the top of my feed, shiny and new, a lie that hadn't had time to fade. 328 likes. Comments poured in. Congratulations. Wishing you a lifetime of happiness. Can't wait for the baby news. Empty words. Pretty but fragile, like paper flowers that would tear in the slightest breeze. I clicked on Nate's profile. He had posted a wedding photo too. The caption read, "From this day forward, we are family." I read that line, and my heart gave a sharp, painful twist. Family. A family where the mother-in-law has the right to beat on your bedroom door at 4 a.m., and the husband asks, "So what?" A family that begins not with love, but with a demand for submission. I put my phone down and leaned my head back. Outside the window, a plane was taxiing on the runway. Another one took off, its nose lifting, engines roaring as it climbed into the sky. In that moment, I wanted to be that plane, to be lifted up and away from everything that had just happened. My phone vibrated again. This time, it was my mom. Seeing her name on the screen, a lump formed in my throat. I answered, "Hello, sweetie." Her voice was warm but laced with concern. She must have just woken up. "How is everything?" "Your first day as a married woman." I stared out at the runway, at a baggage cart moving slowly across the tarmac, and I decided to tell her the truth without sugarcoating it. "Mom, I'm getting a divorce." The line went completely silent for 3 seconds. 3 seconds that felt like 3 years. "What did you say?" she asked again, her voice dropping. "What happened?" I took a deep breath and I told her everything. I told her about 4 a.m., about the banging on the door, about the demand to cook, about Brenda's cold stare, and about Nate turning his back and asking, "So what?" I told her about the order to quit my job and have babies, about returning the check, demanding my money back, and recording the whole confrontation. My voice was steady, but with every word, I felt a weight lifting from my chest, like pulling nails out of my heart. When I finished, I fell silent, my eyes burning. After a moment, I asked her the question I was most afraid of, the question a child asks when they fear they've done wrong. "Mom, did I do the wrong thing?" My mother let out a long, slow sigh, a sound filled with both love and pain. "Listen to me, Maya," she said, her voice soft but solid as the earth. "I did not raise you to be a doormat. If a marriage makes you feel like you're suffocating on the very first day, then you get out. Divorce is not a failure. I am on your side." Tears streamed down my face, hot against my skin. But they weren't tears of weakness. They were tears of relief, the tears of someone who had just been given permission to be themselves. "But what will people say?" I whispered, choking back a sob. "What people say doesn't matter. Are they going to live your life for you?" my mom asked, her voice suddenly fierce. "You are the one who has to live your life, Maya. Don't you ever forget that." I let out a small sob. "Where are you now?" she asked. "I'm at the airport. I have an 8 o'clock flight back to New York." "Good," she said, her voice softening again, as if she were stroking my hair. "Come home, sweetie. I'll make you dinner. I'll make your favorite sweet and sour ribs with tomato and egg soup." I closed my eyes and breathed in deeply. With that one simple sentence, the meaning of home became painfully, beautifully clear. Home isn't a place with a wedding portrait on the wall. Home is a place where someone says, "Come home. I'll cook for you." I hung up the phone, clutching it in my hand. A voice over the loudspeaker announced that my flight was now boarding. People started to stand up and form a line, everyone with a destination, a purpose. I looked at Nate's last text message one more time. The newest one read, "I talked to Mom. You can wake up whenever you want. Just please, come back. I'm begging you." I smiled faintly. Too late. When someone only respects you after you've already left, that isn't respect, it's fear of loss. I grabbed my suitcase, stood up, and joined the line of people moving toward the gate. With every step, I felt like I was walking out of a cage. The flight back to New York was a strange, suspended reality. I sat by the window, watching the clouds drift by, my mind replaying the morning's events in a relentless loop. Each memory, the banging, Brenda's venomous words, Nate's betrayal was a sharp, distinct pang. I thought about the promises he'd made, those beautiful, hollow words about partnership and protection. They weren't just broken, they had been revealed as lies from the very start. He hadn't changed in the last 48 hours, he had simply shown me who he had always been when it mattered. The plane's descent into the familiar gray sprawl of New York City felt like waking from a fever dream. Stepping out of the terminal at JFK, the humid, bustling city air hit my face, a chaotic but comforting embrace, and there, waiting just beyond the sliding glass doors, was my mom. She didn't say much. She just walked up, took my suitcase, and wrapped her arms around me in a tight, unwavering hug. On the drive back to my apartment, she didn't press for details. She seemed to understand that some wounds need silence to begin to heal. The moment I walked through my own front door, the aroma of sweet and sour ribs and simmering soup filled the air. My small, familiar apartment, with my books on the shelf and my plants by the window, felt like a sanctuary. My mother had already been there, turning my quiet space back into a home. That evening, sitting at my own dining table, I ate the meal my mother had prepared. It was more than just food. It was a testament to a different kind of love, one that nourished instead of demanded. Before I went to bed, I took off my wedding ring. The gold felt cold and foreign. I placed it in a small box at the back of my jewelry drawer and closed it, a quiet, final gesture. The next morning, I called a lawyer. She was a woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense voice and a sharp mind. After hearing my story, her advice was clear and direct. A marriage of less than 24 hours, with the evidence you have? This will be straightforward. Her confidence was a balm to my frayed nerves. That evening, as we were cleaning up after dinner, my mom finally spoke about what was really on her mind. She told me a story I had never heard before, a secret she had carried for over 20 years. "You know," she began, her voice soft, "your father didn't die in a car accident." I froze, a plate halfway into the drying rack. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a sad, resolute strength. "I divorced him when you were 5. He was a good man in many ways, but his mother, she was just like Brenda. She believed a wife's only purpose was to serve. And your father, he never stood up for me, not once. He always said, 'That's just how she is. Just be patient.'" The echo of those words sent a shiver down my spine. "I endured it for 7 years," she continued. "I thought I was being a good wife, a good mother, by keeping the peace. But all I was doing was teaching you that a woman's worth is measured by her capacity for suffering." One day, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the tired, defeated woman staring back. I knew if I stayed, I would lose myself completely. So, I left. I told everyone he had passed away because I wanted to protect you from the stigma, from the whispers of a broken home. But the truth is, I chose to break the home to save us both. I stood there, speechless, as the pieces of my own life clicked into place. My mother's strength, her unwavering support, her fierce independence, it wasn't just her personality, it was a legacy, forged in the same fire I had just walked through. She had broken the cycle so that I wouldn't have to endure it. But when faced with my own test, her silent strength had given me the blueprint to save myself. The divorce was finalized in a matter of weeks. Nate didn't fight it. His final communication was a short, bitter text. "I hope you're happy." I didn't reply. My happiness was no longer his concern. It was my own responsibility. Life moved on. I threw myself into my work, not as a distraction, but with a renewed sense of purpose. The project I was leading was a massive success. The day it launched, my boss called me into his office. "Maya," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. "We're promoting you." The board was unanimous. "You're the new director of project management." I looked at the offer letter, at the title, at the salary that was nearly double what Nate made. It wasn't about the money. It was the validation. It was proof that when I chose myself, I wasn't losing a husband. I was gaining a future. I think about that morning sometimes. The sound of the banging at 4 a.m. no longer fills me with panic or rage. Instead, I feel a strange sense of gratitude. That violent, jarring wake-up call didn't just rouse me from sleep. It woke me up from a life I was about to sleepwalk into. It saved me from decades of being diminished, of being told my worth was in a kitchen, of waiting for a man to become the partner he promised he would be. My story isn't a tragedy about a failed marriage. It's a story about a successful escape. It's a testament to the fact that sometimes walking away is the strongest, bravest, and most loving thing you can do, not for anyone else, but for the person you have to live with for the rest of your life, yourself. The banging on the door was the end of a wedding, but it was the true beginning of my life. And for that, I am profoundly, surprisingly thankful.